Greetings, TTRPG fans and enthusiasts. I'm your host and narrator, John, and welcome to Legitcast Ep.19. This podcast is all about inviting people from the TTRPG industry, whether they are, content creators, publishers, or actual play hosts. And Scott from Zeal Zaddy is something, a little bit of everything. So greetings, Scott. So nice to see you again.
Nice. It's great having the mic turned around on me. I think it's pretty cool to do. I'm happy to be here. Super excited.
I'm so happy to have you here. In some sort of a way, return the favor because you have invited me twice to your shows to talk about world building and science fictions, and it was one of my favorite, podcast experience that I had. Learned so much and met cool people. So the least I could do is invite you over to my little show.
Yeah, thank you. It's my favorite thing to do is meet people. So,
so let's talk a little bit about your channel and the behind the scenes, the story. I would like to know the story, how you came up with the idea, all the ropes you had to jump to create it, and where we are right now.
So the channel is Zeal Zaddy, and you can find it on YouTube and Twitch at Zeal Zaddy. But the idea of our talk show, I say our because really Zeal Zaddy is two people, but my partner is a writer. That's all he likes doing and wants to do. So he doesn't really get on camera much or anything. But Story Talk started because I feel there's not enough stuff that I know. So I may as well interview people who know a lot of stuff. That way I'll learn from the best. So it turned into, I don't remember what the first episode was, but there was something I didn't know about. I was like, how am I going to get this information? So I said, I'm going to interview people. So I made a talk show, created my overlays, got it going, and turned it into a talk show and said, I'm going to just start. And it was a lot of fun. I think they learned from each other because I didn't make it a one-on-one. I made it a round table. And what happened was it turned into a cycle of all of them kind of gaining knowledge about whatever the subjects were from each other as much as they were dispensing knowledge to other people, So it became kind of a really wonderful dynamic where it's a learning environment and a growth environment for everybody. And, since then, it's been running since 2023 or late 22 or 2023. And everyone that comes on has an amazing time. They learn a lot. In the interim, I have done some one-on-one interviews, and I do con interviews too at some of the cons like Gen Con and PAX Unplugged. I'd like to do Gamehole Con one of these days. I couldn't go this year because I didn't have the budget at the moment, but that's another one I'd like to hit. And then maybe PAX West, which is out west of the U.S. So that's what it is. I'm dumb and I want to learn more.
You mentioned your roundtables, your Story Talk podcast. I was a fan of it, and I had seen a lot of episodes before you invited me, and that's why it was my great honor, as I mentioned, and a pleasure to be invited and talk and meet other people and talk about TTRPG, sci-fi, world building. You have lots of topics. Actually, it's like a very, very wide array of topics. And likewise with the guests, what is your process behind choosing which guests to select and who to invite?
Well, what I do initially is at the beginning or the end of the year, I start planning episode ideas out for the following year. And I kind of go through and over the year now, I kind of take notes on things I think are interesting and nobody talks about. And if I see something that is undiscussed, or especially if I think it's important, I'll try and find people that I think are within that realm that will also try and who are also personable and like to talk and will get out in front of people. So I think that I do a lot of vetting. Like when I do it, I go and watch videos of other people if I can, I'll watch other interviews they've had. If they have like a book, I'll go read information on the book. If they have streams, if it's just a GM roundtable or something like that, I try and find GMs that are doing interesting things even as a GM. And then I make my list. Usually before I start, I'll have about 8 or 10 people that I plan to reach out to, and I reach out to all of them knowing most of them aren't gonna be able to say yes for whatever reason. Sometimes they don't want to, sometimes they're just busy. So by the time I get done, I'm down to 4 or 5 normally. I mean, I can handle up to 6. That's the most that my overlays are set for. I have overlays for 6, 5, 4, 2, and 1. And whatever I end up with, I'm good with that. And then we go from there. And I set it up. Usually I try and do. It's so funny. I try and set it up at the very beginning of the year for the whole year. And some people will say, "Oh my God, I'm not sure I've ever had anyone plan for an August episode in January," but I have done it. But honestly, through the year, you still have to make a lot of adjustments. People will drop because they just get busy. They forgot because I planned it too early. So it ends up doing that. And now I'm actually adjusting my schedule. I'm doing more of I usually do about 8 to 10 episodes early, and then I slow down as con season comes in and I start doing the cons.
So, Scott, you've had numerous guests from the TTRPG industry. How has interacting with them influenced your very own playtime during sessions or as a creator?
Well, the first one is introduced me to a lot of games I didn't know about, and I try and stream them whenever I can. I stream games on a weekly basis usually, but I don't stream the same game anymore. I used to, when I first started, I was doing just D&D, kind of like every other creator. And we finished a 3-year campaign, and we came to a satisfactory conclusion. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like, I love the idea of a story being told as a story that has I don't want to say a standard structure, but a structure that people can respect. Nobody wants to watch 3 years into a campaign and have it just die on the vine. It's awful. And it's cruel to your audience. So I'll sometimes have new players come in as other players leave, what have you. But then I realized, what happens is with a 3-year campaign, nobody can get into it after a year. It's just, you can't catch up.
Yeah,
so I decided
that's an issue, really. Yeah, with all shows.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
That was actually brought up to me in one of my shows, and I was like, I hadn't thought about it at the moment. I mean, I kind of knew in the back of my head. I was like, yeah, you're right. So now I do what I call mini campaigns. I'll do different systems all the time. Like right now, I don't know if you see here, but Triangle Agency's next up with Daggerheart we're getting ready to publish for. I'm also going to be doing a Harrow the Blighted Plain, which is a cipher game by Underground Oracle. And I'll do episodes that are about 8 to 12 episodes generally. The last one I ran, Magnus Archives, I ran about a 26 episode campaign, which I love the campaign. I love the players. They're amazing. It went on at least 4 weeks too long. I really felt it needed to conclude earlier because I do think you get a better story that is understandable and followable in a shorter structure. You have a super long campaign. I'm not organized enough to remember everything that I started at the beginning all the way to the end, because I don't build out a plot that they have to stick to. I run more of an open world campaign, and a lot of things get forgotten at 3 years that were started at 1 year. Now, I take a lot of notes as I go, but I do my game prep week to week between, from 1 week to the next. So I've learned a lot about how to prep better for my own games. Another one that I've learned a lot about, which was how to cast players and vet them. So now I have a Google form where when you sign up, I have questions on there to kind of vet the type of player they're going to be, because I look for certain types of players. I kind of like players that are willing to bring emotional impact to a show, not just roll dice, not just hit things, and nothing against those games. They're just not games that I love. So I try and bring one so that I have as much fun as they do, experiencing the story they want to tell, and I'll facilitate it as much as I can, and I'll create all the trouble that's needed.
Yeah. You actually bring a very interesting, an interesting subject. I've noticed that all actual play series start with the X number of viewers, and that goes all the way, drops the more episodes go by, and that stands true for not just small-time indie creators, but for even the biggest name, even like Critical Role, they start from very high numbers and they drop. So it's like a common thing, and it's because the reason you said, because if we play something like anything beyond 10 to 15 sessions or something, it's like a long campaign, let's say. And if your players in your own group and yourself as a GM, sometimes you have trouble remember what happened like 5 or 10 sessions ago, you cannot really anticipate, you can't really expect your audience to know what the hell you're talking about that NPC that they met like in the bar 15 sessions ago. So it's much harder to follow. And I think I also was thinking about this lately, that the best way, if you should want to create and draw audience to your shows, is to create mini campaigns or one-shots. One-shots could also work, but anything like 5 to 10 sessions. And as you said, exchange systems. Don't just play D&D. Let's play Tales from the Loop, for example, or Daggerheart, that's popular right now. Or let's go for a horror audience with some alien or TTRPG or whatever, and interchange between your content and have it like short campaigns or even one-shots, instead of playing the entire Curse of Strahd or Eye of Vecna or whatever, that's like many sessions.
The best show I've seen recently is Andor, and it's 2 seasons, 24 episodes. To me, that is about as perfect of an arc as most people can follow and stay engaged in. And it was such a perfect show that it held the engagement. With a TTRPG stream, first off, you're talking 3 or 4 hours an episode generally. So you're 3 times as long as a TV show.
Yeah.
And you're going to have better nights than others. So, if you have a rough show one night, you almost can anticipate a little drop off. Almost. Not always. It depends on your audience and how loyal they are. But you can have a bad show, but then if you have a really great show early, and I do try and weight the earliest shows to get some real impact and power, and let the players really have a lot of moments to shine and feel legitimine, and get highlighted in a way that I'm hoping that they will connect with some people in the audience, whether it's on YouTube or on Twitch. Because on YouTube, the VODs I find have a different kind of a life than Twitch. But if they connect, then you'll have players. Like I watch sometimes, they'll see, oh my god, I love blah blah blah, whoever this player is. Quinn, one of the players in my last Magnus Archives campaign, they loved some of the stuff she was doing, because they were taking notes through the week and making this big board, like a crime investigation board with little threads between all the stuff.
The classic
and I would
meme.
show that on the episode. It was so funny, and it would barely be on there, but people would wait to see that. They want to know what Quinn was thinking about. Quinn's the character. Quinn's the player.
So if
was thinking about
the perfect show on TV is like 24 episodes, but it's like 1/3 of the runtime, something like a TTRPG series, which is like around 15 episodes or maybe up to 20, it's the best runtime for a small campaign that everybody can follow. Yeah, I
I
agree.
even think that's high. I like 12. I think is where
Yeah.
I would like I'd
Or
like
like
mine to cut
or
off
like
at
5,
12.
you know, like 5, like True Detective season 1
5 is
was like
fine.
6 episodes, I think, only something like that. And it was perfect. So for
What I
the
find
characters.
with really short campaigns is if you really have to, first it has to be structured harder, like you have to hit impactfully every episode because
Yeah, and every
there's no
scene
time
really.
for right, there's no time for pauses or quiet contemplation, but I like those scenes. So
Mm,
that's why I don't really like doing little short scenes. I will
mm,
run one shots. Like I ran one shots at CypherCon, which is an online con for people playing Cypher system games. And I ran one shots there. I think it's harder for a player because you have to think of them as performers.
mm,
They're actors that also use dice. If it's such a short um, period of time, it's harder for them to get into the character enough to become emotionally vulnerable.
right.
And I love the vulnerability that comes out when a player falls in love with their character, and then things start happening. Because at that point, that that character and player become intertwined in a way where you can see the emotions on their face. You can see them when if they'll literally cry over something that is happening to a character. They will. I had one player who got comfortable enough that they were playing a a bard and they could sing. They were a little uncomfortable on stream, but then they did a couple episodes late in the episodes where they sang as part of their character, eh, some things the character was doing, and I thought that was beautiful. It's the kind of thing that I'm sure every film director or TV director, they go cut and they're sweating at how amazing of a thing that their cast just showed them. And that's what I want for them. I want them to have those experiences, and I want to put them in positions where they can do that. They can perform that. They can love the craft because that's
Yeah,
what you want. I mean, if they love the craft, you'll know, and you'll know
yeah,
it soon enough.
exactly. That's beautiful. And I always used to say that if I ever had like a bard character, one of my player characters, and they would sing or play guitar or do whatever actual live performance, I would give them a shitload of experience. But none has taken the offer just yet. Fingers crossed, you
I
know.
only had one, and it was beautiful.
So we're gonna get back to your actual plays pretty soon, but let's switch
Yeah.
gears a bit and talk about let's talk about world building, because you invited me over in a show to talk about world building with other world builders, but you also run your own world building seminars. Talk to me a little bit about them.
Yeah, when I started out, I did a few episodes that were all about world building, just because I enjoy it. To me, when I start a campaign, that's where I start. Is sometimes with mapping and sometimes with world building. Um, Running these smaller systems, I don't really need to do as much, even though I mean there's some. But if I'm running something bigger, I do a lot of world building, and my partner and I we're building out product that we publish that's all world built, all world built product for a city called Vadishar. It's all a city setting, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I love world building. I love talking about gods and natural environment areas, how a city functions, why a city is in a place it is, who would live there, who would avoid it at all costs, how do they survive the tough times, how, even a little town. When you think about little towns exist for centuries or thousands of years. Even a little town of a few hundred people can be a badass little settlement in the world that somehow survives whatever happens over all that time. Conflict, natural disasters, drought, their children leaving to go off to college and not coming back. Somehow they still survive. So to me, all of that is world building. And there was a book that I read, I think I have it here, called, oh God, what was it? I know the name. you don't know about geography. And it was such an amazing book. It really told you how geography sets up culture, and then culture alters geography. But you need to have something of value there first. People can't live where there's nothing that they can exploit for their livelihood, to live in. If they don't have food, they have to they have to trade. If they have plenty of food, they don't necessarily have to trade, but they will be asked to trade all the time for the food. There's a lot of things that go into it. So, when I was running Elixium, which is my D&D campaign, the 3-year one, there was a lot of world building in the beginning, and I started them off on an island that for a whole year, they sat on one spot in one place on an island, and they didn't know how much there was out there, but there was a lot already planned and prepped as far as the world. I mean, I kind of let them turn it into what they wanted, but that kind of made me realize how much world building I needed to do for it. And to this day, I'm still not done. I'm not sure world builders ever get done with their worlds.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. But about your seminars, do you how do you start? How does the process go, and where does it leave you? Like, what's the message that you want those that attend to get from them?
Well, the best episode I did was for new GMs, and it talked about starting small, because it's easy to get overwhelmed going, I need to build a pantheon, then I need to build a world, then I need to build build the tavern that they're going to meet in, if that's what you're going to do, and then who populates that, and then build out. And the thing that I kind of pointed out was world building can be done where all you have to do is stay 10 feet ahead of the players. And I really think that a new GM, the best way, because if you don't, you won't run games. All you got to do is world build what's coming up in the next scene. And it could be out through a door. If you want to build out a town, you can build out. If you want to just buy a map on drive-through that has your town, there's part of your world building already done, populated with people. Some things that I found really useful that I think, oddly, I don't think enough people do is I get names, like I'll find books of names. I have a couple books of names, and I have PDFs of names for different parts of the world, so that it's easy to come up with names that feel authentic to whatever kind of a place you're imagining. Because there's nothing to me that says I don't know and I don't have good prep for this than to name everybody Tim or something, like just to throw down any name for every NPC. It also tells the players this NPC is not important, and of course they're going to make him important. Yeah. And of course they're going to make him important because
you can't tell. Well, what's your name? If the GM goes like, his name is Tim Johnson. Yes. Okay, that's not an important character. You know immediately.
Yeah. And your cruelest players will make sure that Tim character becomes a long thread that's important and valuable in your campaign to torture you with that poor name.
Right.
So I have a list of names. One of the things I think new GMs, like when I started, I started a long time ago, but I was playing Traveler and D&D and Gamma World and stuff like that, and I didn't know that the game existed outside the books that I bought.
Okay.
Like, I didn't think about that initially. I thought, okay, whatever's in here is what is it. And then a friend of mine who is now my partner in Zeal Zaddy, Cliff, I played a game of his, and it was the craziest experience because it was the first time that felt like theater. Where we almost never touched the rules. We rarely rolled dice. When we did roll dice, it was really dangerous. Like, you weren't sure you wanted to pick up the dice. It was better not to pick up dice than to pick up dice. But it also made it where the relationships mattered. That's what made it exciting. The relationships and the connections you made and your ability to talk to people completely changed everything. And that's when I realized I don't even think he knows all the rules. He knows enough of the rules, and I think that's all you need to know. You need to know enough. I think I'm not saying it's a negative to know all the rules. I'm saying the characters aren't going to push every rule. They're not going to find every rule. You're going to, as a person prepping, you're probably going to know the rules you need. Now, I do prep certain rules when I know something is going to happen that is already set. And I can get into one of those in a little bit, but it just made me realize that the rules aren't the most important thing. The players are, and their experiences. Build your game around that, not around the rules. Use the rules to enhance their experience. That's it. Don't use it as a tool to punish. Don't use it as a way to cause heartbreak in them. I'm not saying don't let them die, because that happens and that's important, and it's and by the way, there's things worse than death.
Yeah, absolutely.
For running horror for 2 years, I can tell you there are things worse than death that you can do to players.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think new GMs get caught up in the idea that rules are everything, and I think it's important to remember that first, the rules are generally meant as a guideline. Most people can't memorize and remember every rule. Matt Mercer probably knows every rule, or almost every rule of a game he's in, but he's an exception. Like, most people can't memorize 7 volumes or 8 volumes of rules. It's hard to imagine. I even would say, I bet Matt doesn't know the rules, but he preps them in advance of things he knows are coming. Like, I had one episode in Elixia where the environment was the danger. They were in a frozen wasteland, and there were no legitimate monster threats for a distance.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of the most impactful nights, because we ended up using a lot of the rules around starving, freezing to death. The environment was super dangerous, and the survival aspects pushed them to their limits. I mean, they were really, 2 of them almost did die, and they were lucky that they did not die until they got to a place of some seclusion and were able to get a fire, because they had come off of a boat and had fallen into the water in a frozen place. I mean, in D&D you have a lot of hit points, but you know what? That stuff doesn't affect your hit points as much. It's not the hit points. It's all the other things it does to you. It causes death rolls and things like that from terrible environmental conditions. And that scared them more than any hit points I could have taken away.
I think in the same fashion that you said that you don't have to world build everything, just start from a tavern, from the town, from the region where you are, and you don't have to know what's on the other side of the other continent when you begin. In the same way, could you apply it with the rules, like a GM tip? For example, if 100%. You're planning a combat that takes place on a boat, maybe read the rules about how you swim, what happens if you drown, what happens, in sailing combat or whatever. You don't need to read the rules for flying combat or, suffocation from very high, from burning alive. There's not going to be any fires nowhere in a water environment. So, in the same way that you can narrow down the things that you have to prepare for in a world building sense, the same thing applies for the rules, I think.
Absolutely. That's actually what I do when I'm running into rules that are uncommon that I don't use a lot. That's what I do. I prep the rules in advance. I'll even copy them out of the book, paste them in, and kind of clear, like in my prep, it would be a DM binder, but I don't really call it that because it's digital, so it's in my Google Sheet. Rules I expect might come up, and then I'll read those and prepare myself for those. I mean, obviously, there's going to be times when you're not going to have things you expect, and there's going to be rules you're not sure about. That's when either pause for a moment, take a break, look it up, or just roll Rule of Cool and keep the flow going. It depends. I kind of feel it depends on the activity of the players. If the flow is great, don't break flow to fix a rule. Just go with Rule of Cool and let it roll. If
Rule
it's
of Cool,
kind of a
it's a golden rule. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, and if it's a moment where they really do absolutely need to know, take a moment, be right back. Put it on your screen, look it up real quick, or just look it up real quick and let them talk. There's nothing wrong with them talking on screen because as characters, they have a lot of things to say to each other anyway. So,
Yeah.
you don't have to know every rule. Don't memorize every rule. If you want to be a GM, start running and then figure out the rules that you don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely good tips. I've heard a rumor that you're going to be publishing something on an upcoming BackerKit crowdfunding campaign.
Yes, we're actually in prepping. We have one that's collecting names right now, and then we're getting ready to launch one that's going to be for a holiday-themed horror for Cypher system, and it's set in a modernish setting, and it's a wonderful Christmassy kind of thing, except of course for the horror part. And that we'll be launching that in about, what's today's date? 18th, right at the beginning of November. It's already written. I'm building out the art and doing the layout right now, so it will be a PDF download as soon as the campaign ends. So it'll be a 2-week campaign, not a full 30 days. So you'll have time to run it in December.
Tell me how come you've chosen BackerKit instead of Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding platform?
Actually, we have one on Kickstarter that's collecting emails right now for an NPC folio that if it hits a certain number, like in my head, I have a kind of a number that I want to hit of followers, and then I'll launch it. But the next one, we're going to do BackerKit because I want to test both of them. I want to see what the strengths and weaknesses are. Much like when I do story talk, I know I don't know enough, so I'm going to try both and figure out which one is best for us and why. I do like one thing that BackerKit did. We were recommended to them by another person who has done crowdfunds, and they called me and they said, when you come on, you'll have a rep. Kickstarter doesn't give you a rep. They will give you a marketing program. Once you set it up, they'll then the rep will look at it and they'll give you a marketing program to help you make sure that it is successful. Kickstarter doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% sure on this yet, but I believe you keep a little bit more of the percentage of the funds.
That's what I heard too, yeah.
I don't want to say that for sure. I don't know yet. I'll know more once I dig deeper into that. And, I just feel like if you can get those kinds of personal services when you're new and trying to get started, it's kind of a no-brainer to do it. And I didn't know about that when I started my first Kickstarter, the Kickstarter we have sitting and collecting emails. So I feel I'm lucky that I have both, because now I'll be able to test the waters for both and see which ones I feel will work best. And I do plan on doing a stream on what I find about this, because I think there's a dearth of information about putting together and making a legitimate crowdfund that helps or will help a new creator or someone first venturing into crowdfunding. So I'm excited about doing it. I want to do comparatives and stuff, talk about how did this work here? How did this work there? What worked here and what didn't, and what worked here and didn't. I've done several shows on crowdfunding, and I still feel like a lot of people don't know all the details of crowdfunding, even people who have done many crowdfunds.
Yeah,
it seems to be a changing landscape, and the information is always moving.
Yeah, definitely. We've run 2 Kickstarters so far, and we've written two postmortem blogs with all the information we accumulated. I would be most interested when you're done with your own backer kit crowdfund to tell me the pros and cons. The one thing that we already have discovered that's a con towards backer kit, aside from the financial stuff, whether that's on point or not, which I think it is. I think it's a smaller cut, smaller than 10%. The thing that I found interesting that with backer kit you can set up a page, a thumbnail, a title, and start collecting emails. Whereas to do that, to get into the pre-launch page on Kickstarter, you basically have to build at least, to a degree, the reward tiers and this and that, up to a point that the one who is reviewing it on Kickstarter will say, okay, this is approved, this qualifies for this and that reason. So now you can start collecting emails. So if you are in the process of, okay, I have to find to figure out all the reward levels, I have to figure out this and that and the distribution and the panels, it takes a lot more time. Whereas with BackerKit, you just need the thumbnail, title, and idea, boom, you set it up, and then you gain like 2 or 3 months of accumulating and gathering more emails. I think that's definitely definite plus, on the pro side of BackerKit. But I'm definitely looking forward to your stream to learn more how it went. I guess they can find it on your link tree, the links to the crowdfunding, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's perfect. Yes. The link tree is on chat and will be on the description on the YouTube. Let's get back now to your actual plays. As you said, you've run D&D, much like everybody, but you've tested and you've run a bit more, so I say, like not really obscure games, not very obscure, but not like the most common things. You've run Tales from the Loop, but the one that I found most interesting is Old Gods of Appalachia, which actually I had the chance of playing myself a couple of times, some one-shots. And I think, as you said, this one is your favorite. It has like the full-on cosplay and production and the role plays on point. Let's talk to me about your experience playing Old Gods of Appalachia. And before you start, if I may, when I heard the name for the first time, I thought it would be like some eldritch horror or some fantasy land, but it's an actual geographical location in the US, all right?
Yes,
it is. I had to research it.
Appalachia is the oldest mountain range, or one of the oldest mountain ranges. Like, they're not tall mountains anymore. I mean, they're tall when you're driving on them or climbing them or whatever, but they're not like the Himalayas or the Alps or anything like that. They're not that kind. They're kind of worn by age, so they're kind of a mountainy landscape that's kind of a softened edge. And it gets super dark there at night, and there's a lot of mysteries associated with it that are considered ancient. They were there before the American tribes were exploring there. There's all kinds of horrors there from that time on, but it's really more, I mean, it's horror, but it is eldritch horror potentially. It doesn't have to be. It can be supernatural horror. I did one that was more supernatural than eldritch, but I did one that was more eldritch. And it's, I think the theme, first, the podcast is an amazing podcast. Have you ever listened to it?
Yeah, I've actually listened to some of the episodes. Yeah.
The podcast is terrific. It's so well made. It
started from a podcast, right? And then it turned out to the RPG. Yeah. That's also very interesting. Yeah. Very interesting.
Monica Games has got now 2 products out that were built from podcasts that are beloved. One is Old Gods of Appalachia, and the other is the Magnus Archives. And I've run both. Both are horror. Magnus Archives is modern. Old Gods is early 1900s. So, I mean, you could run it earlier or a little later, but it's pretty much that. And when I ran Old Gods, I decided I want this one to be my biggest production. So, full cosplay. I found players that were legitimately wanting to be in cosplay and learning the accents of Appalachia, which learning a hillbilly accent is a little bit tricky for a lot of people. it was not for me because I've lived in a place near. There's another place in the U.S. called the Ozarks that their hillbilly accent is very related to the Appalachian accent. And I used to go there when I was a kid for summer, and I would hear it, and the accent is very sing-songy. You kind of put on a drawl, but you let it run, and you kind of don't let yourself stop talking very easily.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Y'all know I come from the mountains up in Appalachia. It's really hard for me to get in and out of the accent, but when I do, it's really hard for me to get out of it too. You know, it kind of sticks in my head, and I'm gonna go get me a sody pop. It's a beautiful, fun accent to do, and bringing it to and I'm not great with a lot of accents. I can kill that accent. I was like, oh yes, this is right up my alley. I can make this work. The players freaking loved the setting. It was dark. It was a fun era. It was before all the flappers were the de rigueur, but there were some pushes towards that. So it was an amazing experience.
We talked a little bit before about geography and TTRPGs, whereas we were talking about like fantasy settings and world building, but this game basically builds upon real life geography and real life folk wisdom and folk stories, and it turns to whatever the table wants the direction to go. I don't think it has like one specific like Cthulhu mythos, for example. It is more open-ended, and yeah, the ones that I played were vastly different from one another. It was like about some music, and the people that heard the music would grow older, and the other was within a weird creature in the forest. But I think it has a very interesting setting, very cool aesthetics. Where do you think Old Gods of Appalachia differentiates itself from all the other TTRPG horror settings and systems out there?
I think it does an amazing job of making folk magic scary, not just like granny magic. Like there's granny magic, old magic where they learn to help heal you up. That feels more like part of a community. But then it also makes a really dark side to that is just, it's terrifying. And I think that they did a beautiful job of translating the podcast story concepts into legitimately scary play opportunities. I had players die, I had players absorbed into another monster, I had players swallowed by the earth, I had players play cards with a witch, and then there's just so many ways to go, and few of them lead to comfortable places. The world at the time was hard and broken. It was during, a really poor time in America. Money was hard to come by. Jobs were hard to come by. There was industry pushing in on craftsmanship. There was unions trying to create rights to people who are being exploited by systems. And of course, those systems in the game are built by evil things trying to exploit them on purpose. And it made it where even things like a union strike not only is dangerous because you could be shot by the law, but you could also be sucked into a mine that no one knows about and lost in there. Like, it made some legitimately interesting scenarios become really creepy, scary, but you weren't powerless. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Like in a horror movie, you're really never powerless until you're dead. They're always fighting back. So
if you ever run a one-shot, do invite. I would love to participate. I can do the accent, I can do the cosplay. I'm all about that. And I really love the setting. I think it's very unique.
I ran it for CypherCon. I ran a one shot. I think it would fit better as like a 2 or 3 shot. If you'd be interested in like a little bit longer one, more than one night, maybe 2 or 3.
As long as it's not like a full-on campaign and I have to commit,
Yeah.
you know, the classic issue with committing in a full-blown campaign of the thing that we talked about earlier. It's also not just for the audience easier to follow, it's easier for the players to commit. If you say it's not a one shot but like 2 or 3 sessions. So hook me up, I would love to play. So what other actual plays would you like to discuss and what you have planned for the next season?
I'd like to talk about the next thing I'm planning, which is the weirdest thing I've ever done.
Okay, let's talk about that.
I'm creating a role-playing game show called Paper Bag. And I don't know if you've ever heard the expression in Greece, but there's an expression here: you couldn't punch your way out of a paper bag. You know, saying
I haven't heard that actually. No, I've never heard that. Okay.
Yeah, it means you're weak.
Okay.
So I want to do a paper bag. You know, can you role play your way out of a paper bag? Like, is your role play strong or is your role play weak? No dice. Scenarios are brought up, and there's 2 GMs, 3 players, and the GMs are running each character one at a time through scenarios that they have to role play their way through. Chat will vote. GMs will have a vote. And at the end of the night, someone will be crowned the winner of the paper bag.
I'm dying
I'm
to
sponsors at the moment, but the overlays are set. I've got the scenarios, about half the scenarios written for the first episode. What I do want is I want other GMs to supply the scenarios. Like, I have a form for it that I'm building in Google where they supply the scenario, because there's a certain structure that I need for it. And I would love to be able to shout out other GMs' streams as the supplier of this scenario. Like, I would love to say, okay, you rolled the sci-fi, not rolled it, you spun the sci-fi horror. This one comes from John of Legitamine Games, blah, blah, blah. You should check out their stream, and then go, this is the scenario. And the way it works is I give information to the player that's involved and the GM. They have 2 minutes to read it and go over the information and prep. And then when they start, timer starts, it takes I give them 8 minutes, and they have to role play whatever the scene is. And they have a goal. Each one has a goal. And the idea is the GM is not there to interfere. The GM is there to create a good roleplay experience that will highlight the player. So you want the players to do well. There's no dice rolling. They don't have to compete. They're competing with each other based on roleplay. I have some people targeted that I want to invite as for my first episode. I'll be reaching out to them very soon, because I do want to launch the first one next month. And I think it's going to be really fun and exciting and humorous.
I'm dying to listen to tell me an example or something. I think it's very clear, and I already got the gist of it, and it sounds very entertaining. But I have to just give me an example to see what you have in mind. No spoilers, for the first show, but just
okay. So
something.
I've tested it. So I had a private test of it, and one of the GMs their job was to be a magical door knocker, and the player's job was to excuse me, talk their way into getting the door knocker to open the door for them. And the door knocker magically held the door. And they had enough information that they could hit on the right things if they tried to get the other one. Like, the door knocker knew some of the things that it knew based on its creator's rules. Like, it had rules that the creator gave it, because they were waiting on this person, but the person was not the legitimate person. It was like a doppelganger or something. So they had to try and talk its way through with only limited information. And that scenario was so funny watching. It was so like fun. A dark Disney, like a dark Disney kind of moment. It was so funny and brilliant. The scenario played out perfectly. But I also had like a science fiction one that was a little tougher, where they were 2 character two people on a spaceship where the air was fading away. And they had to determine which one could last longest and why.
Oh, wow.
To get the spaceship to continue sending out an SOS type broadcast.
So it's not only comedic situations, satirical. It's also like very hard decision making, and that's super interesting. I'm hooked.
You spin a thing. There's 20 different types, like a D20.
It's like a game show. Yeah, actual game show.
Yeah, there's actually 18, and then there's 20 things you can roll. One of them is GM's choice. The GM could pick whichever one he wants out of the other 18, and one of them is chat's choice. So chat would get to pick the one they wanted, and that way it should draw them in. I think it needs a reasonable number of live audience to make it work because you need to have their vote. So my job between now and then is to make sure that the first episode has enough people in chat to give it legitimate voting.
Will you give it like the 20? The result of 20 will be the interaction with chat, something to excite everyone where it's like the critical or something.
Yeah, chat should be pretty excited about the idea of watching a roleplay competition. I think all by itself.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I am trying to find, I'm looking for some sponsors because I want them to give like PDFs of games and stuff as a prize. I want to be able to give away some things to the winner. I don't want it to just be nothing, if I can help it. And I don't like to say it this way, but I think the first episode needs some people with some following because it needs to attract an audience first. After the first episode or two, I think it's less important, but you need to get people to get there first. And it'll be on YouTube afterwards. I'll do it on Twitch, and the VOD will go to YouTube, and I have a feeling it'll do well I think YouTube will be a good way to feed people back to Twitch.
Yeah, to be participating on the next live show. When is that coming out? When do you plan on recording?
I'm planning on doing it next month, just before PAX Unplugged. I want to do the first episode. So it'll be mid-November. I don't remember the date off the top of my head. And I'll be posting about it soon anyway. So just pay attention to the Zeal Zaddy channel and you'll see the launch dates come up. So, that's about my favorite, weirdest idea that I've had. And there's no role-playing game shows. There's game shows for everything. Everything. There's dance shows. Why are there not role-playing shows?
So what's your final message to all the Zeal Zaddy fans out there?
To me, it's always been about, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. If I am, I'm bored. So always surround yourself with smarter people and learn everything you can from them. Respect, good performers because they bring an amazing level of creativity to your live play. I don't know where to go beyond that. Really, your players are the people who play or participate in your shows are the most valuable thing you have. So respect them and treat them wonderfully, and they'll feel good about what they've done with you, and hopefully that goes on and on. I loved having you on the show. I really appreciate you having me on your show. I think that's an exciting benefit of just being a good member of the community. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much, and it was an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining me. Looking forward to the talk show, to the podcast, to all the things that you're involved. Wish you all the best. And everyone watching us, give a like, subscribe. You're watching us on YouTube. Follow Zeal Zaddy's channel. And above all, stay legit and stay meta.